magnetic field that makes all technology. Okay, there we go. So, you know, Bill asked me to talk about process. That's something that we had a lot of conversations about over the course of the articulator article. And I love going to other people's talks about process, but then I thought, well, what am I going to say, and how is that going to help anyone? Because we all have, there's not a recipe. There's a lot of various, you know, it depends on what you're doing, and what I say may or may not apply to what you want to do. And I kind of scratched my head about that. And then I thought, it's like a recipe for biscuits. And some people like a flaky biscuit, some people like a crumbly biscuit. And so I'm just going to give you some of my ingredients that work to make the biscuit that is my artistic practice, and whatever works for you, you take it with you. So that's just a disclosure statement about, you know, this may or may not be good advice. And okay, so so these are some of the ingredients to my process. And we're going to talk about, these things will kind of come up, not necessarily in this order. And so that's the list. I'm not going to read it out loud because it's annoying when people read something that's already written. And this is a self-portrait, and it's called Self-Portrait as Loose Ends. And so I might not get to all of it in our time tonight. And so if there's a few loose ends, just that's par for the course. That's me. Okay, so part of my process is my bike. I don't know, again, you may or may not know this, but I just got my license about 1.5 years ago, and I'm in my late 40s. So this has been a big change for me to know how to drive a car, but I still ride my bike everywhere because we only have one car. And so this is my machine. I haven't named it yet. I've only had it for about 6 months. I love this bicycle, and I feel like the way I get from point A to point B is definitely part of my process. I feel super lucky that I get to ride a bicycle everywhere, and it gives me I have trouble transitioning from one space to the next. So like I stay at school for a long time because I'm having fun, and I forget, like, oh yeah, I want to be in my studio, and then I stay at my studio too long because I'm having fun. I think, oh yeah, I want to go home, and I forget that I like being at all those places. So the bicycle, that half-hour ride between spots really gives me time to kind of let go of whatever was going on at one space and enter the next space. And it's slow, right? I mean, even if I ride fast, it still takes me a while to get places. And so I have time to take things in, and I have particular landmarks that I like to see and I check in with every day, and I pick up a lot of trash off the road. And so that's, oh, thank you. Not as a, it's because it's interesting trash. I'm not really a good person picking up trash. I'm just interested in that stuff. And sometimes I'm late. I'm often late, and so sometimes I have to ride by something and hope that I can remember that I want to pick that up tomorrow, and hope that it's still there and it hasn't been blown away. So anyway, so the bike allows me to do that. If I was driving in the car, I wouldn't be picking nearly as much stuff up out of the curb or whatever. So I feel like the bike is essential. I think if I wasn't riding a bike everywhere, my art would probably look different. Okay, so here's 2 of my latest finds, and I was just interested in seeing how they look this big, because if I did a painting, it might be like that. But they're right here. This is just a flat piece of wire. I had to ride past this about 10 days before it finally got pushed over to a safe place for me to pick it up. So every day I'd ride, and I'd think, oh, it's getting closer. It's getting closer, it's getting flatter. And so kind of looks like a hat with an idea coming out of it. Or a cowboy boot. I see a lot of different things here. And then this is some kind of rubber that, it looks like coral though. And I thought it was quite beautiful and lace-like. So what happens with this stuff? Well, this might be translated into a drawing or texture or colors. I don't know, but my studio is littered with things that I pick up off the ground. My purse is almost always full of trash that I picked up off the ground because I'm going to glue it in my sketchbook, or I'm going to incorporate it into a painting, or I just want to look at it for a little while. And so that's what I would call an unlikely muse. And I never know which one of these things is going to really trigger a lot of pieces, or if it's just going to be, you know, like one little one-night stand with that piece. Or is it going to be something that I think about for years? So you got to pick it up. So this is an example of my bike riding and my art colliding. So in 2006 to 2009, I live in Oak Park, and there was all these garbage piles everywhere because of the economic downturn and the predatory lending. And it got to be where there was like 3 or 4 piles per street in my neighborhood. And it would change. I'd go to another neighborhood, no piles. And so I kind of had an idea of what was happening before, kind of a canary in a coal mine kind of situation. And first it was just kind of in my way, because this is always in the bike lane. And then it was just interesting to me because it was interesting trash. And then it was just interesting to me as a study of like what people throw away. And then also my parents lost their house to foreclosure, so I connected with like that's a really private moment in a very public space. But then also culturally, like there's always exercise equipment, mini blinds, and like there's a pattern to it that I thought was interesting. So I started taking pictures, and I took hundreds of pictures of garbage piles over a couple of years. And then I started doing drawings of garbage piles. And so garbage piles. And I like to say often, usually I say my work is colorful, except for the couple of years that I spent drawing garbage piles, it wasn't colorful. So I can't ever really describe what I do because it's always changing. So this is a quilt top. It's not technically a quilt because it's just the top part that didn't ever get finished, that I found at a thrift store. It's very large, and it lives in my office. And this is I stare at this wall a lot. This is one of my staring spots. And I meditate upon this daily, and it's hideous. Someone did not know what they were doing. So it's puckery, the geometry is totally off. They used a big variety of fabrics, which as a quilter, you probably wouldn't want to do that because things stretch and torque at different rates, and so you'd want to use like all cotton or all, anyway. So it's like a lot of this is like, I don't want to do a laser. There's like things that look like slips, like faded, bad polyester silks and satins, and then a lot of polyester, and then cotton, and it's just, and I cannot make, there's this overall red grid that attracts me because I've used a red grid in my artwork lots of times, and so when I found this quilt, that was the thing I responded to most. But underneath the red grid, there's a sensibility about color here that I just cannot make sense of. And so I contemplate, like, why that? Why there? Were they thinking? Were they making decisions? Who? What kind of life did they lead? How many people's clothing this is from? I just spend a lot of time thinking about this. And I also think about my teaching and my students and the things I'm trying to teach, and why don't they do their homework, and what is happening, and what did that comment mean, and when am I ever going to learn how to do this better? And then I listen to the radio when I'm in my office, and I think about, the world, and like, why is that happening, and how come we can't do that better? And so this quilt absorbs a lot of my, I talk to this, and it answers back irregularly, but we're still in conversation. And I don't get sick of this. This is like a really, to me, a pretty darn good work of art, because I just don't get tired of looking at it, and I would like to make something as good as this. But also, it's so bad. The color is so bad. We're going to come back to that quilt soon. So this is just like my working space, and there's just a lot of things there. Sometimes I clean up my studio and my office. They both kind of go through periods of high tide and low tide. So sometimes you can barely get in the door, and then other times I clean it up, and that's low tide, and then life happens, and that's high tide. And I dream, like my favorite kind of studio is a studio that just has endless tables that I can just cover and fill. And I don't have that, but that's what I would have if I won the lottery. And I'm a visual person. I feel like all artists are, but that's not necessarily true. But I need things out for me to be organized. So visually organized, like, look, I'm looking at my timer. Oh my gosh. Okay. So anyway, I need, if I put it away, I forget that I have it. It's like it doesn't exist to me. So I have to kind of have things out so that I remember that I want to use them. So that's kind of, and this is why you have a studio, because I don't want to live like this. So most of my house doesn't look like this. But there is one little corner in the kitchen that I live in, and that little part of the breakfast nook is also sort of like this, because I just, I like to read 20 things at a time, and I have lots of good intentions, and So anyway, there's some things here. This I'd like to point out. This is something I saw on the street. It was too big for me to carry on my bike, but it's a nightstand, and somebody put a doorknob on it. And I can't for the life of me figure out why you would do that, but I love the mystery. I love the mystery of the doorknob attached to the nightstand. It's, we have the slant step, right? You guys have seen the slant step. To me, I feel like this is even more genius than the slant step. And it's I regret that I didn't take it home. I don't know what I would have done with it, but I think maybe to hang a purse on. I don't know. I don't know what else is there. This is my newest find. I found this last week, and it's called the Crazy Daisy Winder for fine hand weaving. I have it right here, and it is like a weapon. I'll pull it out, and you can come touch it later on if you want to. It looks like a little circle. Are you guys ready? And then you turn this, and little spikes come out of it. And it feels so good to play with, and I don't know how to use it yet. But there's a little string daisy in there, so apparently it makes these, but I haven't figured out how. Thrift store, yeah. All right, so that's that. Also, I collect rainbow mugs, if it's a good rainbow mug, so don't buy me them because I'm very picky. But this particular rainbow mug I have a few times, and the one at home is starting to fade from going in the dishwasher. And I found another mug the other day, and I got to my student, and I was like, oh, I already had one here. And then I made a rainbow, and I was like, oh, wait, 2 mugs. So that was exciting. I don't know about you, but I struggle with my phone and my relationship to my phone. So studio time is short for me, so I try to help myself by putting my phone in this pickle jar, and then I screw the lid shut, and then I can still see it. If there's an important message, I can still check in, but it requires effort to get to it. And so that's one of my rituals when I get to my studio, is to try to put that thing in the jar to help it go away. So maybe you need one. I don't know. Sketchbooking is a big part of my process. I'm just going to spread these notes out. I haven't looked at them at all, but I did. Just going to just spread them out here. Anyway, sketches. Sketchbooking is a huge part of my practice, and if you're one of my students, you know that I'm big on keep a sketchbook. To me, it's portable studio, so it's everywhere I go, so I can always add to it. I don't really look back into them very often, although I did for this lecture. I took some photos. I looked for, and oh yeah, that idea. So if I ever run out of ideas, I can always go back and look in there and instantly find it. Oh yeah, I was going to do that. I also sometimes read those old entries and I think, oh, I'm still struggling with that, or ooh, I'm done with that. I'm past that point. So it's a way for me to see where I need to make progress or where I haven't made progress, or I do, I don't know. A lot of it too is just brain dumping, there's carrying around a bunch of stuff. I can't work until I dump out my brain or make a list of what I want to do later, and so it's just useful for that. So, so part of my practice when I get to my studio is to open my sketchbook up and just kind of see if I left myself a note or if I need to leave myself a note. So here's some pages. So it could be, sketchbook, journal, whatever, it's fluid to me. Okay, so I included these things because in 2016, the tone of my journal changed. Something happened. I don't want to say what, but something happened, and I needed to work through a lot of feelings about a person in the world, and so sometimes it ends up in there. Sometimes I write a lot, and then I just kind of paint over the top of it because it really doesn't matter. I'm not going to necessarily read it again or care about anyone else reading it, but it just needs to get out of here, and so it's not messing with me here. So if I put it there and then I paint over it, it's gone. Here's some more pages. So sometimes it is actually thumbnail sketches for future projects, or sometimes I'm just drawing whatever's in front of me. That string straw thing lives in my studio. Sometimes I'm making up a new language. That middle thing is I think I was trying to say something. Sometimes I'm just drawing rocks. So I have a little painting that I brought with me tonight. I was killing myself trying to finish it for this talk because I said something about oh, come see my new painting. And then you're not the boss of me. So I decided about, mid-Sunday, after like working several late nights, I figured out on Sunday, like, oh, it's a talk about process. So if I bring an unfinished painting, that will be more informative than if I bring a completed work. And then I was like, oh, that's a good idea, because I've worked really hard on this and I didn't want to rush it. You're lovely, but you're not worth ruining something I've already worked on for a month. So I paused and I came to Jesus and I brought an unfinished painting with me. And my work is changing right now, where I'm kind of being a little bit looser, which is, and so if you don't know me, you don't know how loose this is. So I brought this slide so you can see how not loose I sometimes work. So this is sometimes what my painting and drawing looks like. It's just like, looks maybe printed, but it's all hand-drawn, hand-painted. And so there's part of my mind that just loves tedium and loves exactitude and loves perfection. And I'm trying to recover from all of those problems. And these are both paintings that are owned by the UC Davis Medical Center. So if you have a heart problem or cancer or psychology, the blot over there is in the psychological wing. So anyway, I hope you don't have any of those things happen to you, but if you do, and you go to UC Davis, I'm there for you. I like patterns, obviously, and so I'm always interested in pattern, whether it's architecture or tile or fabric or texture, but also patterns in the world, metaphorical patterns, or things moving in a similar way, or things flattening in a similar way. So I'm kind of a person that picks up on patterns. I like that, pattern recognition. This is my friend Eddie's t-shirt collection. So Eddie wears a Hang 10 t-shirt pretty much every day of his life. And so one day I asked him if I could come over and photograph his t-shirts. And he said yes. And so I spent like 2 days and I took like 800 pictures of his t-shirt collection. And I was hoping to make paintings of his t-shirts someday. So I took these compositions, and I still think these would be really great paintings. These are super boring, very minimalist paintings, but I'm into the, like I want to paint the texture of the, you know, the stretchy ribbing and the stitches. Anyway, I really want to do these. This is like a long time ago that I took these pictures, but I trust myself. I've been doing this long enough that I know that if it's an idea worth revisiting, I'll come back to it eventually. And I'm still interested in these shirts. So I also work in fabric a lot. I think of myself as a painter, but I often do not paint. And like I said, I consider myself an interdisciplinary artist because you never really know what medium I'm going to come up with. But even if I'm using fabric, I'm thinking like a painter, not so much like I don't know, I have a sewing machine, but I don't really know how to sew. So when I'm approaching sewing, it's more like a painter. So I made these things, and this black thing here is the flag of overcommitment. So there was a moment where I was feeling like really spread thin, and I needed, like, I wish I could wave a flag and just say, like, kind of like a surrender flag, but just letting people know, like, I'm overcommitted, to stop asking me. And so the flag, the pink flag right there, is the flag of conflict resolution. So sometimes things aren't going to fit together perfectly, but we need to just move on. Like, we need to get it together and move on. So I did a couple of those. There's a blue and black situation back there. Do you see peeking through? That's the flag about the 2015 blue, black, gold, white dress debacle that broke the internet. And so I had some feelings about that because it was explained badly. As a color theory person, I can explain. I'm not going to, but I could. And so anyway, I made a piece about that. Sometimes I make things and they're for me. And so that flag of overcommitment, I was like, I kind of need to hang on to that. That actually is something I need to remind myself of. So I kept that. But people kept wanting to buy it. So then I thought, all right, fine. So I made a painting of it. And so that got me into painting my own fabric creations. And so that's kind of something that I've been playing with lately. And then this quickly sold. And so somebody else has my flag of overcommitment. This is a large paint. It's bigger than this, but it's so the flag's like this, but now the painting is like this. And I had a lot of fun painting that. And I drew all the little stitches. and I enjoy drawing the stitches. That goes back to the love of tedium. Another part of my practice is just to abundance. So I like to work on lots of things at the same time. I don't think I have ADHD or anything like that, but I do have kind of a short attention span. And I like, a lot of times you literally need to wait for paint to dry. So I need to, paint on this and then work on that. And then I have some paint left over and, well, what needs that color? So I look around the studio until I find something that needs that color. I might paint a soccer ball or something else laying around, might get some paint on it. And then later on, I'll figure out if that was a good idea. So this is just a big stack. These are kind of cannibalized paintings. Some of them left over from grad school. A rat chewed on the corner of them or something, and I thought, well, I can't, what am I going to do? So I cut the corner that the rat chewed on off, and then now they're going to become something else. So I like to be resourceful. I like to recycle things or repurpose things, or I don't know. I don't like to spend money. If I don't have to, it's not, I do like the environment, but usually this isn't coming from like a super green space. This is mostly coming just from a place of resourcefulness, and it just makes sense. I don't throw away a lot of things. It could be a hoarding problem, but it could also be just really concern. I can always find reuse for something, right? So if it's really gross and dirty, yes, I'll throw that away. But little teeny tiny pieces of paper, I've got boxes set aside called extra super tiny gold, because sometimes my very best stuff is the teeny tiny snippets. And so I just really don't throw away very much. So again, the visual things. So these are paintings from years ago. These are all done now, but in this picture, they're all not done. And so I hang a lot of work up in my studio so I can see it while I'm working on it. And that's one of my tricks, is to have things out a lot. I also really believe in leaving things kind of incomplete. So when I come to my studio each day, I know exactly what I want to do because there's unfinished stuff. It's death when I have a show and I take all the finished work away, and then the studio nothing's unfinished. I don't know what to do. It takes me a while to make a mess, and but it's like sourdough starter, right? So each day when I leave and there's some unfinished stuff, I can come back and go, oh yeah, that. So I like that. I believe in that. Of course, I have the privilege of having a studio, and I can leave out a mess, and the cat's not going to get into it, and no one's going to complain about it because it's my space. But I'm a big believer in unfinished, uncleaned. I clean my brushes, but that's it. The rest of it just stays out. How's my time? Oh, good God. Okay, so right now, this is my newest muse. I found this terrible quilt, another horrible quilt, at a thrift store. That's a screen capture of it. I was like, oh, I fixed it, because that's, you see what I did there? I fixed it, because yeah. Anyway, it's all 100% polyester, and it's real thick. No one would want to cuddle under that. It's hot. It was not finished. This person totally got off the rails with the geometry. It's not even rectangular at this point. Love it. Have not fallen in love with something this hard in a very long time. Instant, resonating, it was just, oh, So high for 2 months that I found this. And so I've started painting this, and I wanted to share. So I took some photos of it. I use my camera a lot as a sketching device, and in addition to sketching in my sketchbook. I'm interested in the puckers and, the horrible colors. This is the thing. I looked at some of my work from graduate school, and I was using the same colors, and there's certain colors that I do gravitate towards. I don't really have a favorite color, but there's certain combinations. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm still using these colors. But by entering in a random person's color sensibility, it stretches me, it challenges me. I have to use beige, and double beige. That is a double beige. That's a awful thing. So right now I'm working on this piece, this part of the thing. And so I'm doing a really quick sketch of it. And then I had a painting professor, and he said if you have trouble getting started, his trick was to just write a secret. And then when his wife came down the stairs to bring him his lunch, he'd have to paint over the secret. So I don't have secrets, but I don't like purple. So I just paint purple, and then I have to paint over the purple because I don't want anyone to think I'm making a purple painting. So that's kind of how this one started. I'm sorry if you're a purple, I can still be friends. It's just not my favorite. So, so this is how this is developing. And, I'm not trying to do an accurate representation of it. If I wanted to, I could. But what I'm more interested in is these horrible colors and these weird textures. So I'm trying to do kind of I don't know if you guys know Sean Scully, but he paints lots of layers and layers and layers, and the color gets kind of interesting and rich. Same thing with Rothko, lots and lots of thin layers of color. So this has got a couple more weeks on it still before it's done. But I'm starting to play with this puckery texture. Do you remember that blue? I'm starting to get there on that weird grid, yeah. And so that's what I'm working on. Oh, do I have? Oh, I still have, it says 38 seconds, but I'm going to just call that 3 minutes. So this is a unfinished painting that I'm doing right now, and this is my that quilt from my office, right? And oh yeah, put it in the light. Yeah, and so the thing that's happening here is I did not take any pictures of it. I study it at work, I stare at it, and then I try to remember it, and then I go to my studio and I work on it. And then I go back to my office, and I'm like, what am I not getting right? Oh, stop. And then it was looking too pretty because I was, again, going back to the colors I like. And I'm like, oh, there's purple in there. There's a lot of brown. I got to make it dirtier looking. And so each day I kind of stare at it, and then I go back to work and I stare at that, and I'm kind of doing this like, I could take a picture of it, yes, but it's more fun it's like a memory game that's happening between 3 miles, right? And 24 hours or 36 hours or whatever. So I'm getting closer. I'll look at a pattern, I'll study one part of it, and then I'll like go to my studio and try to like remember what that looked like, and then I'll come back and go, oh, I got that wrong. So you can see that there's some spots where it says like darker. Nope, there's no orange. That just felt right. That felt like a good move, but it's not true. So, and then these that say 2, it's because I have 3 wedges there, and that quilt only ever has 2. There's only 2 squares in the whole thing that have 3 triangles. So anyway, nope, you're making it too interesting. You got to go back to, it is more boring than that. So anyway, this is what I'm working on right now. And it should, I'm going to keep developing it, and it'll get puckery and shadowy and more detail-y. So that's what's happening. Boy, here's a bunch of notes I didn't really talk about. And we're out, it's time. Well, okay, I'll say this. Oh, let's do this. Wait. Oh, it went away. Sorry. Oh, it's my magnetic field. It's hot tonight. It's just coming off me. There. Okay, so there's that. That's just kind of in a nutshell what the article talked about. I will say this, like ritual, I have rituals when I go to my studio, and it helps me, and maybe they'll help you. So it's kind of like a Mr. Rogers thing. So I ride my bike across town. Now I'm either cold or hot, depending on the season. So I got to flip on my heater, and my room is cold. So I got to go get a cup of coffee while the room heats up. Or summer, I got to splash water on my face, turn the fans on, get the air moving in there, go get some iced tea. So first thing I do when I get to my studio is leave. But I can't deal with it. But I go in there, and I just kind of make it more comfortable. I turn lights on, so when I come back, it's like, oh yeah, we're here. But when it's kind of cold and stale in there, it's not inviting. And then I go get a drink, so I'm hydrated. I water my plant, talk to my plant. I've got a plant there that keeps me coming pretty regularly because you got to keep the plant alive. It's named after Matisse, and I care about Matisse, so I got to come in. Henri, how you doing? And water the plant. So that's kind of like Mr. Rogers feeds the goldfish. Then I journal, and so that journal might come with me to the coffee shop where I dump out everything that's bugging me on the day, or what do I want to do when I get to my studio, so when I get there I'm not distracted. I go, oh yeah, I was going to do that. So journaling, and then change of clothes. So I got to put on my sweatshirt. I got a stinky old studio sweatshirt. That keeps me put because it's not attractive, so I got to stay in there. Or I got an apron covered in paint, and that also, like, you change, it's like putting on the cardigan. Like, okay, we're in here to make a mess now. it's safe, and we do that. And then I push things around, and I leave myself a lot of notes. Like I look for notes, because I leave a lot of notes for myself. Like, remember you're going to do that, because every day is a new day. I might not remember, so I got to leave myself some notes. And they might be like on the table, or it might be a pencil laid in such a way that it's pointing to something. Oh yeah, that. So I look for notes, and then I put music on, and then it's going to sound a little bit cheesy, but I do a little essential oil. I change the scent. I got a certain scent that I like to use in my office, and then I got a different scent when I get to my studio. So it's like, oh yeah, that's the studio smell. I got to do the thing. And so those are all things I do to kind of, so that the length of time to get me back to work is shorter. So I'm not like wasting time waiting for inspiration. Just, that's dumb, just get to work. I do get an hour to screw around, and sometimes screwing around takes 5 hours, and a lot of the practice time in my studio is just like staring at that. Or, so a lot of it, but that's working, right? Because I'm staring, I'm trying to remember, and so, and I give myself credit for showing up and staring. So don't beat yourself up. There's a lot of self-loathing that happens with artists, and it's unproductive. And so I try to give myself tiny points for just every little action that is towards progress. And then, let's see, is there anything else I want to say here? Staring, lots of staring. And there's a Japanese principle of Kaizen. I don't know if you guys know that one, but that is like constant self-improvement. And so this painting's a work in progress. I'm a work in progress. I screw up all the time. I fail all the time, big and small. And but I know that I've also overcome a lot of failures. And so failures are just like, oh, that didn't work, but I gotta keep showing up to the problem. And so I just encourage you to like fail a lot, which is like, that's old advice. Everybody has that advice. But I'm just saying, if you're afraid to fail, get in there and screw some stuff up. So I think that's about it. Are there snacks? All right.